Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello and welcome into Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. It is February 15th, 2021, a cold and snowy day here in the beautiful city of Chicago. And on today's episode, we need to evaluate your Chicago Bulls. How are they doing? How are they developing? Our thoughts on Zach LaVine, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, and the rest of this fun bunch. It's been an interesting season, so we got to break down some of the big notes from the team over at the Madhouse in Madison. But before we get to all that, let's take care of some housekeeping notes. You can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. The show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home tour interviews with athletes and celebrities that you could get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves, and keep up to date with everything we're doing on the podcast network, from the True Crime Show, the Pop Culture Show, the interviews, our sister podcast, the Gone Missing Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. So today, guys, I wanted to take a moment to kind of catch back up with your Chicago Bulls. Now, obviously, with everything that's been going on, everything in the forefront of the NFL, the craziness, the Chicago Bears, the lack of moves from the Chicago Cubs, the White Sox being a favorite, it seems like the Bulls have kind of gone a little bit under the radar, not as much as the Chicago Blackhawks. But with that being said, I think there's been a lot of interesting basketball from the Chicago Bulls, this new regime, this new look team, and kind of the energy that they're bringing to the organization. And I also kind of wanted to make a few stops along the way, if you will, in this journey, because we're talking about a team that's 11th in the Eastern Conference right now. We're talking about a team that's 10-15, can probably be 500, should probably be closer to the middle of that. A team that is trying to make a playoff push. And look, I don't think the P word is a bad word right now for the Chicago Bulls. For a lot of different regimes of this Bulls organization the last few years, it has been a bad word. You haven't wanted to say playoffs. It's like talking about a Fortune 500 company or one of these other big organizations that has had year after year after year of bad stocks and expecting something different. And then talking about profit margins and being in the green. Well, right now in this team, there are things to be happy about. There is a future to be excited about. The promise of the organization is in a good spot. Now, personally, and we'll get into a little bit more of the finer details of what I've liked and what I haven't liked so far this season, but the one thing that I wanted most of all from the start of this season was, if this team is not going to win an NBA title, but they're not going to be the worst team in the NBA, then I need them to be at least entertaining. And quite frankly, this Bulls team has been entertaining. Flaws, even with the flaws, being admitted. This has been a team that's been interesting to watch. They've been in a lot of games. They should have won some of these games that they've lost. And more than I think a lot of people want to admit, even if you're not going to win a championship, it's important to be in a lot of these games. It's important to learn how to win. The one thing I don't like, and we'll start getting into the list a little bit, is who's winning some of these games for these guys? Who's going off? Because it's one thing when the people who are going to be part of your future ball out. That's an amazing thing to see that happen. You're willing to win games. You're willing to go different places, allow different things for your organization if it's somebody who's going to be part of your future. But like we'll get to in a second, if it's somebody who's not, if it's somebody who's just a placeholder, that's not really what you want to see because you really don't know a lot. Why don't we get into it a little bit of what I'm talking about? First, we'll start off, what have I liked? And we'll go back and forth for what have I liked, what I haven't liked. We'll discuss it along the way, but definitely what I've liked is this coaching staff, from Billy Donovan and all the guys that he's brought in, they're competent. Look, I'm no X's and O's expert. I'm not. I think most people are blowhards when it comes to this stuff. But you don't have to be a basketball savant, a genius, to be watching the Chicago Bulls and see the difference a head coach who knows what he's doing, that could read a potential of a player, that knows where to put a player so that they succeed, where he tries to hide their flaws. And then when he challenges them to something that they should be able to step up to, it's a beautiful thing. It's something that was so lacking in this city. Think about some of the coaches that you've seen for the Chicago Bulls. This is bad, beyond bad, but this is not an addendum on this season because this is a different regime, obviously, with AK and Eversley and Donovan and the way ownership is going at it. But at one point, we're talking about Vinny Del Negro, Fred Hoiberg, Jim Boylan. How do you win? How do you develop? How do you put yourself in a spot where you're going to be competing against Doc Rivers, Greg Popovich? Like this, that in its own right should have been the warning sign. And it was when we were living in the middle of it. Now watch it with Billy Donovan. There's a sense of relief that they might not win every game, but you know they're not losing because they don't know what they're doing. See, there's something so horrible about mismanagement, about incompetency. Think about any walk of life. When you know somebody or something has the potential to be great, and constantly they're making the bad move over and over again. They constantly get in the same way, do the same stupid thing over and over again. And you just see it in front of you. That's what it was with these old coaching staffs. Then you bring in Billy Donovan. It hasn't been perfect. But also the time when he had, I think it was Denzel on the starting lineup, and it should have been Garen Temple. He straight up admitted that it was his mistake, it was an oversight, that he wasn't meant to be in the starting lineup, so on and so forth. I talked to the players, and it was cool. He smiled, he laughed. It showed that he wasn't going to BS you. Because in other old regimes, like a Jim Boylan, that would have been part of the plan. We know what we were doing. No, we don't make mistakes. You can't show any humanity, any crack in the armor. That's what it felt like for a long time. And when you have transparency, it changes everything in the outlook from your organization. Even when you're the 11th seed, that's how good the vibes are for you. That it's like, at least I know that whoever's steering the ship won't go right into an iceberg. Some other stuff I've liked. Zach has proven himself as a top scorer in the NBA. And we'll get into more Zach talking a little bit because I pondered the question to you all. Is Zach LaVine a star, an all-star? Should you trade him? Look, at the bottom line of the Zach LaVine conversation is this. Yeah, he may not play defense. Quite honestly, nobody in the NBA really plays defense except for like the Miami Heat. And they did it for like 3 weeks in the bubble. Right? Nobody plays defense. People take plays off. And that's no big deal because here's the thing. The object of the goal is not to stop somebody. You got to score more points than the other one. Right? Like I guess it's a philosophical thing. But they don't play defense. That's fine. Who's going to play defense on Zach LaVine? You know, is he James Harden? Of course not. James Harden could have won an NBA title, even with the plus minuses when it comes to his offensive input to his defensive output. Because it's Harden, Bradley Beal, and Zach LaVine, right in that order. So, are you telling me you wouldn't have James Harden on your team? You're telling me he doesn't change the fortune of the Brooklyn Nets? You're telling me as bad as Houston was, a good James Harden cannot take a team to a conference final? He was one game away and a Chris Paul injury from going to the NBA Finals over the Golden State Warriors. Where I'm getting at is, it's not easy to find a guy who's going to score 28 points a game. It's not easy to find a guy where the points find him. It's not easy to find a player to put on your roster that when the game isn't coming to him, he knows how to find a game in it. That is something that not many players can do. And there's a player on this roster who we've seen struggle against the game when the game is struggling with him, and that's Coby White. The difference between a superstar that is having a rough night but knows that any given moment they could go off, they could put the team on their back. That's what Zach LaVine has shown this year. And there's been moments, right, where we've seen him drain a big three-pointer, beaten a big team, has taken his team to that next step. And then there's times when we've seen it like against, what was it, the Clippers or Portland, or where he's making a move to the rim, and instead of just taking it to the hole, getting contact, making the refs call him because he's an all-star, because if you're an all-star, they're going to make that call, right? You got to prove it to the league. He makes a move that he does 1,000 times, misses the layup, Bulls lose that game. And of course, it's easy to be really hard on Zach LaVine because of a play like that. But it doesn't change the fact of the improvement. The dog that is Zach LaVine. Think about the injuries this man has come by. Think about all the coaches that he's had to play under. And he has constantly bettered his game. Now, a negative to Zach LaVine is how well is he going to bring everybody else around him? There are some superstars that are able to put up 28 points a game, but aren't able to get everybody else involved, aren't able to get other players into that next level. I think we've seen that Zach can make other guys good. But I also think that just like Bradley Beal, you're going to have one of the pure scorers in the NBA, and it take you nowhere because you need to surround these dudes. And the Bulls are doing that. The real question is, and we could go into a little bit of what I haven't liked, is the Lauri and Wendell thing. Look, at Lauri Markkanen is going to cost somebody their job next year. So how Zach LaVine has always seemed like he had the goods, right? Everybody's always kind of wanted to risk a little bit of job security for somebody with the potential of a Zach LaVine. Lauri Markkanen has that in his own way. He's a unicorn. This tall European who can shoot the ball and can put the ball on the floor. But there are times when he refuses to be the man. And you can have that in a superstar. See, if you're a killer in any sport, in any profession, you don't need extra motivation. And when you get extra motivation, watch out, right? If that's the case. But Zach LaVine doesn't need to be told to take the game over, to find your shot, to get right. Coby White's learning that right now. Whether he does or doesn't learn it is another conversation. And we might get into that in a second. But Zach LaVine finds it in a game. If he's struggling, if his shot isn't going in, he'll find ways to be in that game to make himself important. I don't see that enough with Lauri Markkanen. I see too many games where he goes off for 30 points, bunch of rebounds, crazy from the field. And then I see times where the man can't stay on the court, where he gets bullied around, where other players are looking around like, I'm going to eat tonight because Lauri's on me. I like Lauri Markkanen. I really wish not only that it works out for him, it works out for him as a Chicago Bull. But from what you've seen now, would you give him a max contract? And it's the same thing with Wendell Carter. So somebody else who I liked. This is the problem with that old Bulls regime, though, and it looks like the Wendell Carter thing. Michael Porter Jr. was right there on the board for you. I was screaming from the mountaintops, you got to go for it at the draft. You got to go for the guy that has the higher potential. It may bite you in the ass, but you need to find somebody that could change the fortunes of your franchise, that puts you in a better position today than it was yesterday. Now, as a man, to the man, Wendell Carter's a good dude. It's a good draft pick as an individual. Wendell Carter's biggest problem is that the one ability he's been lacking is availability. And you can't have that when you're going to be paying people. You can't have that when you're evaluating people. Look at what do you know about this Bulls team when Wendell Carter is playing with Lauri, with Coby, with Pat Williams, with Zach LaVine? They haven't played together. Like, this Bulls team has been relying on Thaddeus Young. And it goes to the point I made earlier. It's one thing if Wendell's winning you games, if Lauri's winning you games, LaVine, Coby, Williams. But when Thad has to play so many minutes because a Gafford can't stay on the court, another young guy who isn't developing right now or is having a hard time developing. Or because Wendell Carter isn't playing, or because Laurie isn't playing. That's not what you want. You don't want that. It's a nice treat. He's keeping you in games. He's been a wonderful asset. But not being able to see what you're getting from Laurie and Wendell has been the biggest detriment to this Bulls team this season. Think about how much fun you've had watching the Bulls game. Think about how much fun you've had talking about the Bulls. Thinking about the potential future of this organization. But the one thing you don't know, the one thing I don't know, the one thing that I'm hoping AK and Eversley and Billy Donovan have paid enough attention to and have an idea about is, what do we got with Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter? And are you willing to put a financial burden on your team with these contracts, good or bad? It could work out, it may not. But I'm not smart enough from what I've seen to make an evaluation. That is the hardest part of this team. The hardest part of this season. The hardest part of this whole situation. This team hasn't been healthy enough to play alongside each other. And here's the thing, it's going to go by quick. This Bulls team is going to make noise and moves faster than you think. Whether that is a Zach LaVine trade, whether that is an Otto Porter trade, whether that is a Lauri Markkanen trade or a release, or they don't re-sign Wendell Carter. All these things are possible. And I don't think necessarily that Lonzo Ball coming to the Bulls, if that trade rumor is true, changes much about the development of Coby White. If anything, it makes it where they're going to start making Coby more what he is, which is a scorer. Not make him have to think so much. Not make him have to run the offense and make sure everybody gets theirs. And set up the offense. And especially at 20 years old. When he played during a missed ball for 9 months, that's another thing. This Bulls team hasn't played for 10 months? So we're seeing a lot of growing pains with this team. But the one thing you don't want to get caught with is bad contracts. Because there's a lot of things you can survive in the NBA with. Bad contracts is not one of them. They're so hard to get out from under. And that is what you're facing with Wendell and Lauri Markkanen. And a little bit more of the, a player evaluation. Coby White. At this point, in the middle of February of 2021, do I think this is going to be the next best point guard in the NBA? No. I don't think Kobe's going to be a top 10 point guard. The one thing I know, though, is the all-time leading scorer at North Carolina will find a way to be good in the NBA. It's up to this organization, it's up to this front office and to this coaching staff to find out how comfortable they are with how much he knows to run this offense, how much he's able to, and then let the man do what he does, and that's score the ball. And I'm waiting to see when that is. I wonder if a lot of this is we're just going to let the kid learn. He's going to learn trial by fire. And if that's the case, I'm not hating on it. Because again, this is a season when you're not winning the finals, so if you're going to make your mistakes, make them now. But do you think, what have you learned from Coby White? You know that he's a good kid. He's fun to watch. A lot of energy. Doesn't have the best ball skills. Has a hard time splitting the defense. Has a hard time setting up the offense. But the man can go off for 8 3-pointers. The man does know how to score. He does have killer in him. I think we are a little hard sometimes because we've seen him play a lot. He's on the starting lineup. We want to see this team be great. We want Derrick Rose. Guys, Kobe's not Derrick Rose. Coby White's Coby White, a dangerous scorer from North Carolina. I want to see that. And if this means that we're going to get that later, we need to, part of this growing pain is to see, can he be a starting NBA point guard at number 1? I don't necessarily think so. But I think you can find a way in today's league where lineups are so fluid to find a spot for Coby White on a good team. But when it comes to the purity of the position, bringing in Lonzo Ball is its own interesting fact. Because Lonzo Ball was facing the same problems that Coby kind of is, which was running the offense, being a pure point guard. We've seen that he's put a lot of work in his three-point shot. But look that's the one beyond the Lauri Markkanen and Wendell thing, which is more frustrating because there's not a lot of time to be able to watch them all gel together, the Kobe thing has been the most puzzling thing to see kind of happen. Because we've seen the regression and then we've seen the burst of awesome basketball. So what is the real medium of that? Where can I put the average at in that for Kobe White? And that's something that as the season goes on, as this team is more competitive, and as we start seeing how these tournaments are going to play out for the playoffs, we'll see how maybe he turns around the corner and maybe he isn't the point guard who's going to distribute the ball. Maybe he's just a point guard who knows how to score points. And finally, when it comes to evaluation, Patrick Williams. Look, I thought he was going to be in the Rookie of the Year running. He's not going to be in the Rookie of the Year running, but the man's earned the respect of a lot of players in the NBA. The man, the kid, 19 years old, doesn't look lost there. That is, to me, if you're not a scout, I'm not a scout, right? I don't know everything that it takes to find the best player. I've never scouted Hall of Famers, NBA champions. But what I do know as a human, as a person, reading people, is when somebody's comfortable, when they're in their element, when they don't seem lost. You know, they don't have happy feet. They don't have that rapid breathing motion. You don't see that with Patrick Williams. He doesn't have the deer in the headlights look. He looks like he belongs, not just the way he plays with his confidence, but physically like he belongs in the NBA against a lot of these guys. And how you know that is the way guys are going at him. Not just because, oh, the Rook is here. It's because they know this guy's going to be a problem. They know he's not going to go anywhere throughout the game. Yeah, Patrick Williams is not going to be, at least right now, this Kawhi Leonard-esque scorer where he's going to be able to put the game on his hands, his gigantic hands, and win it for you. But he's going to play good fundamental basketball. He's going to be a pain in the butt for the best scorer on the other team. And think about for a second there, when LeBron James goes out of his way, when a Kawhi Leonard goes out of his way, when superstars go out of their way to be like, you got one over there in Chicago. It's high praise. And I have liked what I've seen. Now, this is kind of where it all comes full circle. When we've been talking about Laurie and Wendell, when we're talking about growing pains, Thaddeus Young being somebody who's been huge for the Bulls, even though he's not really part of this core moving forward. We've been talking about playing up to their competition, playing down to their competition, being shown the difference of levels in this game when they're going against somebody like the Clippers and they're able to go to fourth gear and the Bulls just quite aren't there yet, especially with some of these injuries. And you're getting guys back from COVID. We've talked about how this bench with Thad Young and Satoransky and Tempo and Hutchinson and Gafford have really helped pick up their slack for the starting offense whenever the starting offense has struggled. But it all comes full circle to one thing, and it's the Patrick Williams effect, where that's the only guy right now on this roster that Karnisovas, whichever pronunciation you like, Mark Eversley, and Billy Donovan, it's the only guy they brought in. It's the only guy they drafted. That's their only guy. So when you think, can they really trade Wendell? Can they really not sign Laurie? Is Zach LaVine going to be a Bull forever? Kobe White, 20 years old, there's no way they could do anything with him. They're not going to flip him. They never drafted any of these guys. They didn't scout any of these guys. These aren't their picks. There's only one member of the Bulls' current roster that was scouted, drafted, and started by this new front office, and it was Patrick Williams. So, when you start seeing Zach LaVine getting pushed for all-star votes, and you're starting to hear talks about potential moves for other point guards that could run the offense, you're starting to see what this front office has in mind for its team. You're starting to see how important the evaluation is. So while the Bulls may not win an NBA Finals this year, while the Bulls might not even make the playoffs this year, this season has been so much fun because there's been stakes. There's emotion. There's heaviness to this season. You're seeing guys play for contracts, playing for careers, playing to put themselves in established positions. You're seeing an organization trying to heal itself from the inside out. You're seeing a sports world that's trying to healing all at one time. And this is some of the best time as a sports fan. Here in the city of Chicago, we've seen a lot of champions over the last decade. And we have the promise of a few champions for the next decade. And the one thing that you never hear anybody talk about, but is the most underrated part of fandom, is when your team is on the ascension. When your team is not the Beatles. They're still out there playing in local clubs. That is the best time. When you're watching the guys grow and become a unit together. When you're watching the maturation of these guys' careers. That's what's happening right now. The next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see free agents come in. You're going to see draft picks. You're going to see a team that was a laughingstock go from missing the playoffs and having a circus and a revolt to possibly going for title number 7 within 5 years. That's awesome. That is the best part of being a fan, is watching your team develop and go from the basement to the mountaintop. And watching this Bulls team, all this evaluation, even from the negative stuff from Laurie to Wendell, to the positive stuff of Kobe, Zach, and Patrick Williams, to right in the middle of veterans like Thaddeus Young and their development this season. It is so much fun when your team is competent and relevant. And that is what Billy Donovan, Mark Eversley, AK, and this new regime have done for your Chicago Bulls. And with that, they've even made Zach LaVine an all-star potential player. Did you think Jim Bowling would ever going to do that? Let me know your thoughts. What do you think, though, of this Chicago Bulls team so far, 11th seed in the Eastern Conference? Do you want to see Zach LaVine get moved? Do you want to see Laurie Markkanen get a contract? What are you feeling about Wendell Carter? Are you excited about the potential of a Lonzo Ball trade? Do you think Kobe White is a true point guard? Your thoughts of the first half for Patrick Williams. Let us know what you're thinking. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. The show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. That'll do it for us on this edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Don't forget, you can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. The show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities that you can get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves, and keep up to date with everything we're doing on the podcast network, from the true crime show, the pop culture show, the interviews, our sister podcast, the Gone Missing Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy all the games. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.